Good morning from the social justice team. When we created our Ladera Community Church vision with Lindsay Fulmer's guidance a few years ago, we used Post-it notes and flip charts so that members could indicate which social justice issues we wanted most to consider. We came to 3 areas of service: issues of immigrants, families and children, and economic disparities. They're not unrelated, really, when you think about it, but those are the 3. And this group was continued after Jeff arrived. The social justice team, from experience, soon saw that understanding of and personal connection to the needs of the recipients of our resources made our efforts more effective and much more meaningful and motivating to everyone involved. This connection, this feedback allowed us to receive information about how our contributions would be used and to learn about the results of our efforts. We also keenly wanted to communicate these facts and figures to all of you so that we would all feel invested. We want to share our enthusiasm in order to inspire us all to do more. We have seen that this approach and this sharing creates a continuing and a deepening relationship with each other and with those whom we serve. We also find that being on the social justice team, we are simply representatives of all of us at LCC. We have chosen a few activities to focus on this morning, and you'll hear about them. Many more activities have continued and continue to bubble up from all of you as individuals and in small groups. We're a social justice-minded church. These activities can be represented with the image of a redwood tree as the many branches. So the activities are the branches of the redwood tree. LCC is the strong trunk, and we get a continued good view and a reminder of that every Sunday. So the redwood tree is, LCC is the trunk. The redwood tree's branches are all the things that we do for social justice. We can also identify with some of the unique characteristics of the redwood tree, which help keep our ideas going. These huge, huge trees start from a teeny, teeny seed. The redwood tree's roots reach horizontally instead of vertically like most trees. And these roots nourish and support the individual trees and the neighboring ones as well. And they thrive best being close to others. So we hope this sounds familiar and relatable. To learn more about our social justice redwood branches, Lynn Fenn today will share a branch about our ongoing connection to the Boys and Girls Club. Kurt Luck will talk with us about Puente, and Linda Clever, way back in Baltimore, will describe some of our civil discourse and Save Our Democracy efforts. And we will learn and see again why we often feel like we are the lucky ones to be able to be part of this kind of giving. Linda.
Thank you, Dolly. Good morning, everybody. I live in San Mateo and come to this church and have for many, many years. And in San Mateo, there's a banner outside the UCC church, and it says, progressive, inclusive, spiritual. I plan to talk this morning about how our LCC social justice team and the larger LCC community puts those values into action through our hands-on involvement with the Boys and Girls Club in San Mateo and Redwood City, and how our interest in this club became more and more important to us beginning back in 2018. Separate from my involvement with the LCC social justice team back then, I decided to volunteer to teach reading to kids K through 3. I remember uh, getting to the club on my rented Lime bike and signing up. I had no idea of how much I didn't know about what I was signing up for or how much that volunteer experience would teach me and change my life priorities. It became a spiritual journey. What I knew at that time, which was how to teach reading to children who spoke English, and a certain level of comfort and confidence with young children because of my Ladera Community Church preschool experience. The first meeting was eventful. I had planned to try out a new reading program, knew nothing about the Boys and Girls Organization, nor the fact that Kyle Barringer had experience in the organization, and I could have learned from his experience as a high school math volunteer. But I didn't know that he was down in Redwood City doing that. So this is what I walked into. I my first incorrect assumption was that most kids would speak Spanish and be fairly familiar with the basic alphabet sounds. And what I learned was I had a group of second graders who came from many, many different backgrounds. Some had very excellent reading skills and advanced readiness, and others were not English speakers yet. And they came from far and wide places, including South Korea, Vietnam, and Taiwan, Mexico, South America, the Pacific Islands. I was actually amazed. So the first thing that happened was I had about maybe 13 second graders, and one hid under the table and poked everybody's toes. And so I had to set aside the curriculum, which wouldn't have possibly fit this group, and do a magic show, and then ask for help. And what I learned was that the fact of offering reading was anxiety provoking for the kids, and that one of the fears was embarrassment of being spotlighted in front of their peers as not being proficient, or maybe put down. So the volunteer coordinator helped me come up with a successful plan. She provided me with 4 volunteers to help, to divide the kids into the right groups in terms of skill level, and to teach the volunteers how to teach reading one-to-one, so peer-to-peer. And so there was a lot more privacy and emotional safety around the learning process. And it worked out fairly well that year. My job was to basically get the materials together that all the volunteers needed, and give them a recipe of how to teach reading. And then they would take over the leadership of their groups from there. Although humbled, I learned how to be successful and enjoy the process, and stayed the year. And what I found out was that there was this energy to that club, and I wasn't sure where it was coming from. But I did notice that the older kids were caring and tracking the younger kids to make sure they were getting their needs met. And that all the kids felt trusted, and they trusted the staff to be caring toward them. And that the families would come on Fridays, and they would be a location where they would get produce for the weekend, many families, but also lingered and enjoyed what was going on and talked informally and stayed much longer than what it took to pick up their produce and go home. So in 2018, I talked to the social justice team through anecdotal stories about what I was learning. And I guess what I was able to convey was how much the organization was loved by the community and how many people were being served, because the organization had an after-school program, and they were taking children from kindergarten age all the way through high school. And so some families who had many children, 4 or 5, were all there. And they were there for years and years. And the other thing I learned was, beginning in middle school, the alumni who had graduated from the organization, many were volunteering to begin helping those children see a bright future for themselves and get in touch with what their talents were and their interests, and then how to make plans for the future so they would have a vision of what their work life could be that would fit well for them. And also, there were many organizations in the community where volunteers would come and share their work skills, whether they were trade skills or professional skills. And so there was this vast amount of energy going toward supporting a great number of children. So I think that's about all I have to say about the boys and girls. And now Kurt will talk about Puente.
Thank you, man. Well, just one more thing about the boys and girls is look for this announcements this coming month. Through June, we're going to do a fundraiser for their garden expansion project at that San Mateo Club. We're going to do things like adopt garden items like a bundle of spades or a bag of compost, 2x6 boards for the garden planters and so forth. Look for more information. Oh, thank you. Been so dutiful. Puente is a wonderful nonprofit on the coast. Puente actually is the Spanish word for bridge. Their full name for Puente is Puente de la Costa Sur. So it's a bridge on the coast. They're based in Pescadero. Their staff there works with single migrant farm workers and families in need along the coast. Their services run the gamut: advocacy, adult education, youth, leadership development and employment, and scholarships for high school students, high school graduates, economic security, health and wellness. Puente also works directly with the county school system, county health, and the YMCA. They are knitting a community of success and help. During the pandemic, Puente has risen to the occasion, distributing food, providing vaccines, going to the farms to vaccinate the workers, and more. Puente provides the only childcare in this rural area where most parents must work. Our congregation was very generous to Puente in 2020. We started with an endowment fund grant, pardon me, to Puente for COVID relief early last summer. And then in response to the terrible devastation and loss from the coastal fires, the social justice team sponsored an emergency fundraiser in September. Our church ended the year donating the annual Christmas offering to Puente. These three contributions totaled just over $5,000. Puente used our donations to purchase individual gift cards, blankets, and warm clothing. The gift cards were very intentional. It gave the people respect and independence. They got used it where they needed to, instead of us sort of controlling it. Ladera Church has a historical relationship with Puente. Its founder, Reverend Wendy Taylor, and her partner, Ellen Sweeten, were once members here. And I found out yesterday they went on to Belmont, but she did work at the Pescadero, serve at the Pescadero UCC Church. I tried to get in touch with them to see what they were doing connected with the church connection to Puente. And of course, the social hall at the church has been used constantly, except during COVID. During two Thursdays ago, they go twice every month on Thursdays to have a sort of potluck dinner there. They began that two Thursdays ago, so they're back. I mentioned to past members here about this, and Janet Hollingswood, well, it doesn't matter, I'm sorry. Janet and Michael were friends here, and she said that she helps make masks for Puente, so that's her part as that church. And I've mentioned her name. Let me get back to the text here. Well, just what we've been doing during COVID, we have been meeting virtually with them. They came zooming into two of our social justice team meetings and so forth. But we do look forward to reconnecting in person and in the field where possible. And we hope to include the whole church in these outreach opportunities, special events, or just going out there and helping side by side. In closing, I must say that Linda and Jamie Clever have been instrumental in getting us reconnected with Puente. They had discovered Puente's work while attending a regional UCC meeting there as representatives of their previous Mill Valley UCC church. When Linda brought the idea of us helping them with COVID relief, the whole social justice team immediately caught the spirit and began reigniting our past relationship, hence 3 fundraisers last year. And yes, Linda's spark continues to this day, for sure. Linda wrote this sentence, it's something like Musimbi's. It's hard to imagine the level of poverty in the coastal communities and the level and hope and practicality that Puente brings. And now you're going to hear from Linda herself.
Thank you so much. Can everybody hear? Yes, thanks. I'm going to continue on about the social justice team, just to say that we've also been active in little picture and big picture things. We've been active about ourselves and also our country over the last several years. And just like redwood trees, we've leaned on each other as we've learned and clarified and discovered and taken action, and then we evaluate. We get reports back so we know what we did, if we did anything, and if it worked. And then we corrected course, and then we've had our fair of celebrations as well. At any rate, for ourselves, the little picture and our church over the years, we've learned and sponsored programs on civil discourse, the start of these connections that we want to make. The League of Women Voters came to us at one point and offered a full afternoon workshop where we role played and learned to stay true to our values. We also learned to listen in order to understand, not in order to reply. We want, especially when we do reply, not to reply in the negative nor to negativity. For our country, from the country's perspective and social justice, we learned a great deal about voting and voters' rights and getting out the vote, the sorts of things that make self-governance something that vibrates and actually can happen. We listened to nonpartisan groups and advisors about how to make our actions and our funds, FUNDS, individually more effective. We heard directly from Kathleen Unger, who is the founder of Vote Writers, which is a not-for-profit that is aimed at the 36 out of 50 states that have voter ID laws, many aimed at not allowing or encouraging people to vote. At any rate, we also learned how to get out the vote, urging people to get out the vote, whether it's by supporting food trucks or urging people to vote and to register in the first place. And we've done that via phone calls, via postcards, via letters, and we continue to do that. We've also showed up since, as Dolly pointed out, this is a social justice church. We've showed up at programs about the environment. And for example, it is a social justice issue when you really think about it, back to Musimba Kenyoro saying, times like this, the bottom sinks deeper. So the more we've learned, the more we've understood about fairness, which is what justice is about is fairness and not being biased and being open. We've learned about doing what's right, not just knowing what's right. So we've put on our activist outfits and gone forward. We learned that it takes work to respect, to pay attention, to be there, to listen, to adjust. We see that it takes practice, as you've heard from all of these reports. The first time often doesn't work. You just have to keep trying. And overall, what we're working at is building bridges, just the way the roots of the redwood trees intertwine and nourish each other. And why do we do this? Maybe it's because the Bible tells us so, just like Sam's wonderful introit with his jazz. The Bible tells us so. And maybe it's because of our faith. And maybe it's because of what Maya Angelou said in The Human Family, her poem that ends this way. We love and lose in China, we weep on English moors, and laugh and moan in Guinea, and thrive on Spanish shores. We seek success in Finland, and born and die in Maine. In minor ways we differ, in major we're the same. I note the obvious differences between each sort and type, but we are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. And with that, we'd like to thank you for your support, your enthusiasm. Enthusiasm means N means within, and THUS is from Theo, which is God. Enthusiasm means God within. We're grateful for you and thank you. And if we could proceed to sing the next hymn, which is I Am the Light of the World, verses 1 through 3, and is page 469. Thanks again.